Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Cahan, and I'm Congresswoman Luz Rivas's Legislative Director. I'll be leading today's workshop and wanted to first thank everyone for joining us today to learn more about the fiscal year 2026 appropriations process. We're excited to have you with us today. Please put any questions that you may have in the question and answer function of the webinar at the bottom of your screen. We'll have a designated question and answer session at the end where we'll go over any questions that you may have related to the appropriations process. Please keep your questions just related to FY26 appropriations. If you have any specific questions related to your community project funding request, we'll try to answer it here, but we will likely ask you to follow up with us at rivas.appropriations@mail.house.gov to better clarify potential eligibility. We also have Ryan Kinney from the House Appropriation Committee's Democratic staff to help with our question and answer session if needed. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us today. Before getting to our formal presentation, I wanted to introduce Congresswoman Luz Rivas to make a few opening remarks. Congresswoman?
Thank you, Zach. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I want to start by thanking my team, Zach, Marcos, and Maribel, my district director, for the work that they have put into organizing today's webinar, and of course, Ryan from the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for joining us today. We're here because we have a shared commitment to serving our neighbors and making our communities stronger for the next generation. Since I took office in January, my team and I have already met with groups across the district to get an understanding of the resources required to achieve all of these goals. And one of the best ways to do this is through the federal appropriations process. And I know many of you that are here today with us have already gone through this. So I'm excited and to read your proposals. And I know that receiving federal funding directly here in California's 29th district is a huge part of my role as a member of Congress. These funds can be used in many different ways. And like, for example, helping community health centers in our district care for those that really need it. And there's other ways I know that in the past, Congressman Cardenas has helped. I intend to continue doing that, to working with many of you. And that's why I wanted to put on this webinar so you can get your questions answered about the application process. And just want to assure you that my team and I are here to support you. We want to see federal funding come in directly to our district and be used to help our constituents. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll hand it back to Zach.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman. As folks can see here, we have our agenda laid out for today's workshop and the work that we'll cover. So with that, I want to dive right in and go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over to our district director, Maribel Becerra, to quickly introduce herself.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Maribel Becerra, District Director for Congresswoman Luz Rivas, and I just wanted to share a few services that our office can assist with. So our office can assist with federal services such as U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, Social Security Administration, SSA, Department of State, Department of Education, Veteran Affairs. I've included our phone number to our district office here, which is at the very bottom of the slide, 818-253-3535. Please give us a call if you have any questions or concerns or you have a pending application for any of these services. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Maribel. I also want to introduce our Senior Legislative Assistant, Marcos Sanchez, to say a few words.
Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias, everybody. My name is Marcos Sanchez, Senior LA with Congresswoman Luz Rivas. Always a lot of familiar faces on the chat. Always great to see the Valley in the house here in DC. Looking forward to working with all of you and making sure that we have really good applications to deliver for the district. So thank you.
Thanks, Marcos. And between the three of us, we'll be largely the ones, working with you on any submissions that you may have. If we can go to the next slide. So as you can see, we've created a few, resources to help individuals and organizations submit requests. We have a specific email address where we're aggregating questions and comments that we may have at rivas.appropriations@mail.house.gov, and a specific webpage dedicated to our appropriations process and forms. We can go to the next slide. Here's kind of a snapshot of our webpage listing and highlighting the forms that we have available for programmatic or language requests, as well as our community project funding requests. We also have a specific community project funding or CPF guide that the team has put together that you can download to review and look at to help submit your process and your requests. The next slide, please. So many of you may be asking, what are community project funding requests? For fiscal year 2026, members can submit up to 15 local projects to receive specialized federal funding. These projects are incorporated into our annual government funding bills requiring congressional passage. If you can go to the next slide. So I want to proactively say that, as part of this, we are working within the guidelines that have been set out by the House Appropriation Committee's Majority Chairman, Tom Cole. They published this guidance last week, and it is an open and competitive process for local, state, and tribal governments and eligible nonprofits. These nonprofits are usually eligible within the Commerce, Justice, and Science subcommittee, and we'll get into the specific kind of subcommittees and eligible accounts later on. And if you submitted, I do want to reiterate that if you submitted a fiscal year 2025 congressional project fund, your organization should resubmit for FY26, as well as submitting any updated letters of support. This funding is primarily used for capital expenses versus programmatic, operational, or planning. And these proposed projects, as mentioned, must meet eligibility requirements outlined by the Majority House Appropriations Committee. Next slide, please. So, this process and deadlines are managed by the Appropriations Committee. And the committee provides members of Congress with these strict guidelines and requirements for projects. Our office will review submitted projects to ensure compliance with these guidelines and requirements, and also likely go back to you and your organizations to ensure that we are meeting this compliance and ask any questions that we may have. Additionally, if and when your project is submitted as part of the CPFs, and if it is accepted, we will be posting that publicly on our website. This is part of the requirements process that's laid out by the Appropriations Committee, and just want to make sure that entities are aware of that requirement. Next slide, please. So we'll get to I think this process, as I mentioned, is open to state, local, and tribal governments, as well as some nonprofit entities. And if you think your nonprofit may be eligible, you should reach out to rivas.appropriations@mail.house.gov. Project funding, may not be directed to for-profit recipients either. And, wanted to lay out the eligible projects, by subcommittee. So these are the 7 subcommittees that will have CPFs, allowable, for fiscal year 2026. We'll go through each of these in just a minute to display the exact types of projects and accounts that are eligible. We will also make sure to send the Republican House Appropriations guidelines to everyone following this webinar. Each of these subcommittees and accounts have their own specific guidance. And while we don't have the time to get into the specifics of each account right now, we will make sure to share resources following this workshop in addition to our presentation. Next slide, please. So for the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Rural Development, and the Food and Drug Administration, within the Department of Agriculture, here are the, I believe, 6 accounts that are eligible, running from community facilities grants, the Reconnect program, distance learning and telemedicine, water and waste disposal grants, buildings and facilities, and then our conservation operations. Next slide, please. For our Commerce, Justice, and Science subcommittee, there's a variety of accounts that are available. And again, I do want to mention that some nonprofits may be eligible for CPFs within this account and within this subcommittee. Again, it will vary depending on the project and type of nonprofit. But I did want to flag that, as I know some groups had questions, upon registration. So within this subcommittee, we'll have a few programs within the Department of Justice for policing services and assistance grants, NASA for safety, security, and mission services, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Next slide, please. For the Subcommittee on Energy and Water Development, these are primarily U.S. Army Corps of Engineer civil works projects related to construction, investigations, operation and maintenance, or the Bureau of Reclamation for water and related resources. Next slide, please. For the Subcommittee on Homeland Security, we have federal assistance for pre-disaster mitigation projects, as well as Emergency Operations Center grants. Next slide, please. For our Interior and Environment Subcommittee, these are two grants that are largely within the Environmental Protection Agency for Clean Water State Revolving Funds and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. If we go to the next slide, we have a couple of helpful charts that the committee has produced that help illustrate what is or is not generally acceptable for these accounts. As we can see here, there's about 7 items that are items that are not generally eligible for grants related to clean water or wastewater, and about 9 that are not eligible for drinking water. If we go to the next slide, I know it may be a little hard to see here, and again, we'll share these materials following the webinar, but there's about 13 items that are generally eligible for clean water, and about, I believe it's 8 generally accepted uses for the drinking water grants. We think that these charts are very helpful guides to help you think through how to create a successful CPF within this space. Next slide, please. For the Subcommittee on Military Construction and Veterans Affairs, there's a few items here within the construction and unspecified minor construction active components for different defense-related agencies, and as well as their reserve components. Next slide, please. For our Subcommittee on Transportation and Housing and Urban Development, these are always great subcommittees that we've seen in the past that provide opportunities for airport improvement programs, highway infrastructure projects, rail and safety improvements, transit infrastructure projects, or port projects as well. This also includes guidance for the Department of Housing and Urban Development Economic Development Initiative. Next slide, please. So, on this slide, we want to give an example of, what has been approved in fiscal year 2024. As you can see on this slide, Pacoima Beautiful was able to get funding through the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Subcommittee to help, renovate and expand, some of the work that they've done to serve residents in the heart of Panorama City. Next slide, please. And here, the Boys and Girls Club of the San Fernando Valley was able to fund renovations for their Triple Play program, after-school program. And this was funded through the Department of Justice account. Next slide, please. So, how do we evaluate projects? As mentioned, a lot of our guidance is going to come through the House Appropriations Committee, guidelines and requirements that are laid out for each eligible account and each subcommittee. We also want to make sure that these are project-ready, CPFs and project-ready funds, ensuring that there's a level of impact on the community in California's 29th district, a level of community support. And through the guidelines, there is usually a requirement for local funding match. And again, we are subject to the limitations set forth by the majority party of the House Appropriations Committee. If we go to the next slide, please. So our expected timeline. We opened our appropriations website and our application on April 3rd. As of right now, we have our application closing on April 14th with the expected, staff review of projects April through early May, with project announcements likely coming in spring and summer as Congress goes through the appropriations process. If you have specific concerns around the timeline, please reach out to us individually to discuss. We're happy to work with entities to ensure that your projects can be considered, and want to make sure that everyone is getting the answers that they need to during this important period. Next slide, please. So these are the programmatic and language requests. These are important, while not community project funding, these are still an important part of the FY26 appropriations process. So a programmatic request is, for a specific funding level for a federal program. The example that we provide is about $4 billion for the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. And these are specific, as mentioned, specific funding requests for a specific program, whereas language requests are more open-ended, where it's a request to include a specific bill or report language that does not direct funding to a particular entity, but encourages, some type of action. I think these are best used to direct how an agency is spending money in a certain account, to direct funding in an account towards a specific program or priority, or to help influence, agency actions. So, with that, I want to go to the next slide and, open it up for question and answers. So I know there have been a couple of, questions so far that, where we've submitted asking about letters from last year. And yes, all letters should be updated. We will share, the PowerPoint after. We are hoping that, if you have any questions, that you can submit it into the Q&A, function, in the chat. As we, await questions to come in, and not to put Ryan on the spot, but just want to see if she has any additional thoughts or helpful guidance.
Hi, everyone. Thanks everyone for having me. Zach, you did a great job explaining the whole process, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Ryan. So the status on any requests from fiscal year 2025, as part of the government's continuing resolution that was signed into law earlier in March, the fiscal year 2025 community project funding requests did not move forward. Those should all be resubmitted with any updated letters of support to our office. I saw a couple of questions related to flexibility for submitting letters. Yes, we will have some flexibility on those letters. I think we just urge folks to try and get those letters of support in as soon as we can, as soon as you can, rather, as there are various deadlines for these CPFs that are as soon as early May. So while there is some leeway, we don't have a ton. There's a question I see on how do we find the requirements might be for local funding matches? We will send out, as part of a response, we will send out this slide deck to everyone, as well as a link to the House Appropriations website that has specific guidance for each subcommittee. Every subcommittee and eligible account has specific requirements that differ ever so slightly. As I'm just going through these questions, so just give me 1 second. So, I see a question on, what these capital projects mean and how, if this is for a single year or multi-year, these should not be multi-year requests. And, my understanding has been that these should be shovel-ready type projects. And I'll let Ryan, go on there.
Correct. These should be 1 year projects only, and just like Zach said, shovel ready. There are some you'll see in the guidance for Homeland that they require it to be shovel ready. So there are some in some subcommittees that actually require it to be shovel ready.
Thanks, Ryan. And if you go to our website, rivas.house.gov/appropriations, you'll see our forms and office guide there. And I believe we should be able to put that in the chat as well. If Amy or Marcos, if we could maybe drop that in for everyone to see to help guide folks there. And I think I know there was a question on likelihood of CPF funds being provided. I'll turn to Ryan for that one.
No one wants a continuing resolution. It doesn't benefit anyone. Republicans also have community projects that they lost out on. So I think from both sides of the aisle, we really want to make sure that we come to an agreement and are able to pass a full year bill.
Thanks for that, Ryan. And yes, our right now, deadline right now is Monday, April 14th, to at least, submit the project requests. We realize it may take, another day or two for, letters of support and things like that. But, I think, we need to ensure that projects submitted are meeting the House Appropriations guidelines and allow for time for the Congresswoman's staff to, do any follow-up with organizations to ensure that projects are meeting the requirements set forth by the Appropriations Committee. Again, if you have any specific questions, about, your project and concerns about meeting, this deadline, we will put our, email address, rivas.appropriations@mail.house.gov, in a follow-up email, to everyone who attended. House rules. As I'm just kind of going through these questions, and I see someone ask a question, which accounts do you anticipate to be available for requests? The accounts that we went through for the 7 subcommittees are the ones that the House Appropriations Committee has identified for community project funding requests. If you are looking to submit a programmatic or a language request, there's additional opportunities, but we wanted to focus on CPFs and the eligible accounts there. There was a question around explaining any conflicts of interest to be aware of. I'm going to turn to Ryan here if she can kind of touch on that. The question looks to be explaining any conflicts of interest, and if an organization applies for funding from any other federal department or program, how does that impact eligibility for this application?
So for community projects, members just have to can't have any financial ties or family members part of the program. They have to submit a letter saying that they don't have any affiliations, family or friends. Mostly only family, sorry.
Thanks, Ryan. And there is a question around shovel-ready projects and what that means. So if a shovel-ready project that can be completed in 1 year, but as part of a larger multi-year project, should an applicant, include the details of that larger project in the budget and project description, or limit their request to the work that will be done in FY26 only? I'm going to turn to Ryan to see if she can give a little guidance before I so I don't want to speak out of turn on that.
No, that sounds about right. We'd have to look at the guidance for EDI programs. They might have specifically a 35% completion, but I will double check and get back to Zach on that one.
What time specifically on the 14th is the deadline? I would say up until 11:59 p.m. I see someone from asking if they're not ready to submit a request for FY26. When will the application for FY27 be open? I think that would be at some point next year is generally when obviously the FY fiscal years are not quite the same as calendar years. So right now I see Ryan unmuted, so I also want to give her a chance to jump in.
The appropriations season usually starts when the president submits his budget, and then the appropriations process kicks off. This year, the president hasn't submitted his budget yet, so we decided to just start the process. But it's usually around like April, May that we get, requests for community projects and programmatic and language requests so that we can start writing the bills in May and have markups in June.
And again, if you are concerned about getting your project submitted by Monday, but you think you need an extra day or two or three, please reach out to rivas.appropriations@mail.house.gov. And our team is happy to work with you on an individual basis and a case-by-case basis to ensure that you are able to submit a successful or submit a rather an application within a time frame. I see a question around resubmitting requests based on the president's budget after that is released. We do not know when the president will release his budget. So I would recommend submitting items now, but I'll see Ryan unmuted too.
We've heard it's going to be sometime in early May, so we might have some time, but it'd be up to the majority if they will reopen it up for programmatic and language requests after the president's budget comes out.
Yes, these slides will be sent after the meeting. We will also send links to the House Appropriations Committee's guidance to ensure that everyone has that in one place and can look through that as well. As mentioned, every subcommittee and every eligible account has different guidance. It may be similar, but it differs ever so slightly in certain ways. And again, I see another question around the support letters. They do not have to be part of the April 14th deadline, and we'll continue to work with entities. I would say to try your best to get as many letters in by that April 14th timeframe, just to help ensure the moving forward with your application as well. Give it another couple of seconds. I think we answered just about every question in here. So want to make sure we give it another few minutes to see if any other questions pop in. As we wait, wanted to again thank everyone for joining us today. I think hopefully everyone found this to be very helpful. And it looks like there was another question on for capital projects. If these CPF requests are primarily for capital projects, I want to turn that one over to Ryan.
Yes, it's primarily for capital projects.
Great. I'm just looking through. Again, we just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. And just wanted to and there was there was another question around, if we can define what a capital project is. My understanding is these are more kind of shovel-ready type projects, but want to see if Ryan has anything that she would want to add on to that.
Yeah, so it's shovel-ready projects. It's not for planning purposes, and it's not for reimbursements. So it would be a project that is ready to go, and not in the planning phase.
And when applying for the Homeland Security project, there's a question around which template should be used. I would have to double check what the guidance for Homeland Security projects is. And again, that individual should email us at rivas.appropriations at mail.house.gov, so we can ensure that we are giving the proper guidance to you. And there was a question around kind of more of a, I think, technical question of when do we anticipate the House rules to be released by the Appropriations Committee? I think that individual may be referring to the guidance for each subcommittee and each account, and that is published now, and we'll send that link, but want to give Ryan a chance to elaborate.
Yeah, so they sent out the guidance last week, and it will be on the website, or Zach will send it out.
Yeah, and again, following this workshop, we will make sure to send around the slide deck that we use today, as well as a link to the House Majority's Appropriation Committee website that specifically lists all the subcommittees, all the eligible accounts, and specific guidance that you can use to really tailor your application to the specific subcommittee or account that you are using. We've got about another 5 to 7 minutes. So I want to just wait to see if others have any last second questions that they are thinking through. And one question that just came through is if the project cost may include staff salaries. I'm going to turn to Ryan for clarification.
It's not for staff salaries, no.
Thank you, Ryan. Well, as we wait for any potential last second questions, again, just want to thank Ryan from Ranking Member Rosa DeLauro's team for joining us on behalf of the Appropriations Committee to help answer any questions and to be with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great that your office is providing this to your constituents.
And one question that just came through is on renovation projects, and if entities would be able to include indirect costs. My sense for both of those is that it will likely be dependent on what account and subcommittee you are applying to, but I want to see if Ryan has any additional thoughts.
Yeah, I'd have to see what the project is. So if you email Zach that, I can take a look at it with our Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development clerk on the project's eligibility.
And again, want to thank everyone for their patience, as we may not have the immediate answer right now on your specific project, but we will certainly look into it for you and work with the Appropriations Committee. So as it looks like questions have started to taper off and folks have started to drop off a little bit. Again, just wanted to thank you for joining us today and being interested in learning more about how you can apply for FY26 appropriations. Again, we will make sure to send all this information out to you later today, and we look forward to continuing to work with you as the FY26 process unfolds. So with that, I do not see any other questions coming through, and want to thank everyone and wish everyone a great rest of their day.